Welcome to my video about lines and functions. So we're going to be going over what the properties of a line are. And the first thing we have to remember is what slope means. Remember that slope is just rise over run. And what this essentially means is that the rise goes up and down on your axis, so that actually represents your y-axis. And the run, you're running across the x-axis. So if we have 2 points, the first point being x1 and y1, we can put the little ones there just to say that it is part of the first point. And then the second point would be x2 and y2. And again, the little 2 just represents that it's coming from the second point. So since we said that rise represents our y-axis, we can take our y values for our 2 points and subtract them to find the difference. So we would have y1 minus y2, and that would give us how much our rise is. And to find our run, all we have to do is take the difference between our x values. So we can subtract x1 minus x2. The only thing you guys have to keep in mind is that if you start off by subtracting y1 from y2, you have to do the same thing with the x. You have to subtract x1 minus x2. You can't switch the order. Whatever point you start with in the numerator, you have to start with in the denominator. So this actually tells us how to find the slope between 2 points. There are 2 ways of writing the equation of a line. One way is called the point-slope form. And in the point-slope form, it requires you to use 1 point, which is the x1 and the y1, and a slope. So this can be used when you have 1 point and the slope. The most commonly used form of writing the equation of a line is actually the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, where m represents your slope and b represents your y-intercept. One way of identifying what m and b do is by remembering that m tells you where to move and b tells you where to begin. Now let's talk about the x and y-intercepts. The y-intercept is where the function touches the y-axis, and that's actually this point right here. And the x-intercept is where the function crosses over the x-axis, and that is this other point here. At the x-intercept, you guys can see that the y-coordinate is actually 0. So in order to find what the x-intercept is, we can set y equal to 0, and similarly for the y-intercept, the x-coordinate is 0. So to find the y-intercept, we can set x equal to 0. So let's try finding the equation of a line passing through the points 4 and negative 8 and 8, 6. On the side here, we have a list of steps that we can follow. The first step is to first identify the slope. And since we're given 2 points, we can use the slope formula of y1 minus y2 all over x1 minus x2. So let's label our points. This 4, negative 8 can be our x1 and our y1, and then the 8, 6 can be our x2 and our y2. So 4, negative 8 is our first point, 8, 6 is our second point. Now let's just plug it into our slope formula. So slope is represented by m, and we have our negative 8. We have negative 8 minus 6 all over 4 minus 8. So if we subtract negative 8 minus 6, this is actually equal to negative 14. And if we subtract 4 minus 8, we get negative 4. We have a negative over a negative. A negative divided by a negative is positive. So this reduces to positive 14 over 4. We can actually simplify this fraction. Whenever you have the option to simplify, you should always simplify. So we can divide both numerator and denominator by 2, and if we do that, we get 7 over 2. So this is our slope. Moving on to the second step, we actually have to choose 1 point now to plug it into the y equals mx plus b form. And I'm going to decide to choose 8, 6, just because it is positive to make it a little easier. So I can say that 8 is my x and 6 is my y. If I plug this into y equals mx plus b, my y in this case is 6. My slope, which is m, is 7 over 2. My x is 8. So I'm going to put parentheses around that because it's an input. And my b. So now I just have to simplify this. One way of simplifying this would be by taking 8 and dividing it by 2. So we can take this and simplify it. 8 divided by 2 is actually 4. So this would simplify down to 6 is equal to 7 times 4 plus b. And now all we have to do is just solve for b. So we have 6 is equal to 7 times 4, which is 28, plus b. So we can subtract 28 to both sides to get b by itself. And once we do that, we are left with negative 22 equal to b. So this is what we get for b. So we have just solved for b. Now our final step is just to rewrite everything in y equals mx plus b form. We know what our slope is, so we know that this slope is going to be 7 over 2. So we have y equals m, 7 over 2, x plus our b, which is negative 22. You can ignore the positive and just write in minus 22. That way you don't have two symbols that confuse you. And this is our final equation for this line. So now let's try to find the slope and y-intercept of the graph 4x plus 2y equal to 2. The easiest way to go about this is to just put this into y equals mx plus b form so that we can identify what the slope and y-intercept are. So we have 4x plus 2y equal to 2. If we try to isolate y by itself, that will give us the form of y equals mx plus b. So first, we're going to want to get rid of 4x because that is the only thing that is next to 2y. So once we get rid of this, we're left with 2y equals, and since 2 and negative 4 are not like terms, we can just write 2 minus 4x, or negative 4 minus 2, whichever way works. The only step we need to do now is divide by 2 to both sides, because 2 is in front of the y. And whatever we do to one thing, we have to do to everything. So we have to divide absolutely everything by 2. So this leaves us with y equals 1 minus 4 divided by 2 is 2x. And again, this is the same thing as saying y equal to negative 2x plus 1, because you can always reorganize your terms because of the commutative property. Now that we know this, we can easily identify where our slope and y-intercept are. From here, our slope, we can see that that is just negative 2 because of the form y equals mx plus b. And our b is positive 1. So our slope is negative 2 and our y-intercept is positive 1. If we wanted to draw a sketch of the graph, remember that the y-intercept tells us where to begin. So we have to begin at 1. So we can plot our point at 1. And the slope tells us where to move. Since our slope is negative 2, we can actually rewrite this with a denominator. That way we can determine what our rise and what our run is. So if we rewrite this with a denominator, we can always rewrite a whole number over 1. So this means that our rise is negative 2 and our run is 1. Since our rise is negative, that actually means that we're going down. So we're going down 2 and over 1. And that leaves us with this point here. So if we connect these 2 points, that is our line. In the next video, I'll be introducing functions to you guys. So make sure to tune in.